My question is actually it's quite simple, and this is a question that I gathered from an audience member, someone who follows the podcast and shot a question. It's like, "Hey, Leo, would you ask this question to Tania and Silvina?" I said, "Yeah, send the questions away, and I'll ask." And the question is based in. I actually have here some of the studies. There's a study by De Jong in 2020, "The Changing Landscape of Language Teaching." There's one by Yildiz in 2021, Language Choices of Language Teachers and Learners. It was a meta synthesis of qualitative research. A lot of these recent articles and these recent studies, they are kind of suggesting that second language classroom is changing. It's becoming increasingly multilingual, and we talked about this with
Mm-hmm.
heritage
Mm-hmm.
speakers as well, and multinational. In your
Mm-hmm.
professional opinion, is this often mentioned distinction between first language and second language, is that becoming increasingly irrelevant or tenuous? What do you think?
Actually, there is a new field that
Oh.
we deal with. First of all, what used to be second language acquisition, then we talk about bilingualism because we want to talk about the heritage
Mhm.
speakers. And then 20 years ago, but it's a small field, but it's growing. It's called multilingualism or L3 acquisition.
What's the
So when
second
I'm
name?
saying that I was teaching, huh?
What's the second one? Multilingualism?
L3,
L3.
Energy.
L3
L3.
acquisition.
Third language, yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
we mentioned it in the introduction, don't
Yes.
we? I
I
think.
think maybe, yeah.
So we said that we, for the purposes of this book, we are not going to make this distinction because it's still very new to
Mhm.
take into account in an intervention study. Even the field of third language acquisition, it's a lot of fun, very theoretically driven by all the possibilities of where your knowledge may be coming from. But one of the problems that this field has is that the sample sizes are very small because it's
Mhm.
very difficult to control for so many things.
Yeah.
But it's a very exciting field. So yes, the classrooms are becoming more multilingual. And also another concept that has been debated
Mhm.
a lot is what is a native speaker.
Yes. Oh, all over LinkedIn.
you know Yes.
Mhm.
So, yes, we still use these labels because they are historical, I guess, and we haven't come up with anything better.
Mhm.
But I think there's wider recognition that there is more diversity. So maybe before we were blind to diversity, or we just wanted to be more categorical with everything. And now I think there's more recognition that things are not black and white. There's sort of shades of gray, and there's more diversity and variety in everything we do that before people have not paid attention to. So I mean, this is going to impact the terms we use and how we practice what we do, I don't know
Hmm.
yet. But there is this change.
And that's why research
Right.
goes on, right? There's always new research to be done.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah,
And new perspectives.
absolutely. Before we wrap up, we have a thing that we do at the end of our show where we ask the people we're interviewing, so in this case, the two of you, a question to leave for the next guest that we will interview and know who they are or their context or anything. So there's two parts of this. The first part is we have a question that was left for you two. And the question is this. If you could talk to a group of teachers who are interested in being informed on current trends in research, what would you tell them about competing approaches and theories? They've heard that there are theories in conflict. What would you tell those teachers that it means for them in their context?
I think I would say that linguistics and including the part of linguistics that specifically works with second language learning is a science. And in science, theories change. There isn't one right answer. The way that science works is we make hypotheses, we test hypotheses, we garner evidence for or against them, and we build theories on the basis of the data that we obtain. Some hypotheses turn into theories, others don't. Theories change. So, so the fact that there are many different approaches doesn't mean that all linguists just don't know what they're doing, but rather it means that we're actively working to try, doing our best to try and explain, the process of second language acquisition, best approaches to language teaching. And there's still much work that remains to be done, but we would recommend that if they're interested, that they read books such as, not just ours, but, books on second language acquisition and teaching, and, really learn about the reasons for those different theories, and look at, learn about the studies that are used for researchers to formulate.
Amazing. Does Silvina have a
Yeah,
competing answer?
if I may add something, is yes, no, just to add to that, theories are not religions.
Exactly.
Okay, so if you are a scientist, you have to have an open mind, and I mean that doesn't happen a lot, but so when people say I don't believe in this theory, well, what is the evidence that you have for not believing? No, it's not just believing because I don't believe. So we are scientists. Second language acquisition, or language acquisition in general, is a very complex phenomenon. That's why theories focus on one aspect or the other. So even if Tania and I have worked a lot generative theory, which focuses on the, what the learner brings as part of the innate endowment, whereas empiricists have focused on what the input brings. But both components are important. It's like one theory focuses on this part, the other. Sometimes they have been presented as antagonistic, but if you look at it, they are not antagonistic because they are looking at different phenomena. They are complementary. So I think we need to stop seeing theories as there's not one truth, only one truth. We are all trying to understand a particular phenomenon. The phenomenon is complex, that requires different perspectives. And again, theories are there to be tested and to be discarded or refined. And then there's also new tools that come into the game. Like, for example, when Krashen proposed the acquisition learning distinction many years ago, people were like criticizing him for being vague, for being untestable, all that. Today we have tools like psycholinguistic experiments, neuroimaging, that allow us to really test that idea. And maybe he wasn't wrong. We just had to wait 30 years to answer those questions. So, theories are hypotheses and ideas about how something works, and then we work to see whether it's a accurate representation of what we think the phenomenon
Amazing.
is like.
Amazing. That question was left by Bill Van Patten. Actually, that was his question for you.
Okay.
And he also said that Krashen, in his words, Krashen was right. That's his opinion. And maybe we just had to wait 30 years to find out.